Edition of ESPN FC. I'm Dan Thomas, John Craig, Burley, Brian McBride. Welcome back to the studio. John Champions is here. UEFA Nations League continues to dominate international football. The big game, Portugal taking on Italy, and it will be Portugal with a 1-0 win over Roberto Mancini's side. That really doesn't quite tell the whole tale, does it, Craig? Because Portugal completely bossed this game from start to finish.
Well, if you're looking at the importance of winning this Nations League group and looking at players, it's clearly which one Mancini wants to do. He wants to, because he changed wholesale changes from the game against Poland, where I have to be honest, and we talked about it, they weren't great. Gab Marcotti, our colleague, seems to think this is a new exciting dawn for the Italian team. I think it's only early, but there's no real evidence, even with the squad selection, that I think Portugal have got more flair players than Italy at the moment, and I think that showed in the game tonight. The way they played quicker football, they had more possession. They didn't have Cristiano Ronaldo, and they played some good stuff. Yeah,
thoroughly deserved the 3 points. Roberto Mancini's got a big job, hasn't he, now, Brian?
Yeah, and Mancini seemed to be caught in two different minds. Of course, new players. First half, they came out, and they looked a lot like a team that was dead set on playing like an old Italian squad, where they sat back, defended, and tried to catch teams on a counterattack. The problem is, they don't have anybody up front that really can run in behind and cause a threat. And Mobile is very good at that, but they didn't have any service to him and behind him. Having said that, they also need a forward that can actually hold the ball up and connect passes under pressure. And you saw the team then come out the second half and say, you know what, we're going to open this up, we're going to press a little higher, and it just allowed Portugal a lot more time and space on the ball. Much more dangerous team, and like Craig said, the score could have been much higher.
You think of all those years you've been commentating, John, all those many, many years, and those great Italian teams that you've seen.
Yeah.
This just pales into complete...
Yeah, I mean, I guess we've got to give Mancini a bit of wriggle room at the start of his new job. But having said that, he knows what's available to him. And to me, the two performances so far, and probably I base my judgments more on the Poland game because I actually commentated on that, there were just none of the usual definable qualities of an Italian national side there. Whether it was Chiellini and Bellucci, you'd think that those two, now reunited at club level, together in the national side, there was uncertainty there. Jorginho, who's been lovely to watch at Chelsea, has made a really favourable impression in his first few games at Stamford Bridge. He was making no real impression on the game, and there was very little at the sharp end of the pitch either. So I'm not quite sure where Mancini starts with all of this.
So the big game, Portugal with the victory. Meanwhile, one of the most exciting finishes happened in Sweden. Sweden were cruising 2-0 up, yet 2 late goals for Turkey really given Turkey too much hope.
No, none at all. And the interesting twist in this is that they're 2-1 up with 88 minutes on the clock. And the player that turns it really in Turkey's favour is Emre Akbaba, who's the player that Mircea Lucescu, the veteran coach, had steadfastly refused to put in the starting 11. There'd been an outcry back in Turkey. He came off the bench with half an hour or so to go and scored the 2 goals that changed the face of the game.
He really did. He was the hero on the day.
John's been reading up on his Turkish newspapers again ahead of the game. The outcry from Istanbul. Look, Sweden are never going to win any awards for whenever they play for having the prettiest football, but they've got an effective way of playing. We saw it at the World Cup. It took them to a quarter-final, well beaten by England in the end, but they're organised. Turkey, on the other hand, have got technically better players. They've always had technically good players, just not as good as they once had, but they're still better than Sweden in that respect. But they're having a tough time as well, and they're really under pressure because the crowd expects, but they've been struggling to get to major championships. But they kept plugging away, particularly after losing to Russia in match day 1. So in the end, a good result for them. But no, Sweden are not a great side. They're just a side that gets results. Obviously not on this occasion.
Yeah, and they get results because they know what they are, right? They know that they're a team that wants to play direct. They've got height. They're good on set pieces. For me, this Turkish team came alive after Sweden scored their second goal. It was almost like a shock to the system. Yeah. They started passing the ball better. You could see that there was a little bit more impetus in going forward. When Çalhanoğlu gets that goal right after Sweden's second goal, I think that just it powered Turkey through it, and the belief started to actually show. And then the 2 goals, they're good goals. I mean, the tying goal was some great interplay inside the penalty area. Sure, you know, whether or not the tracking and defensive side of things wasn't necessarily great, but all in all, after that second goal, I thought Turkey was pretty sharp.
I thought that Sweden missed Granqvist today. You know, a big part of their World Cup campaign, steadying influence at the back alongside Lindelöf. Today it was Janssen, plays in the English second tier with Leeds. I thought they looked a bit shakier than you expected. I mean, how often does Sweden concede 3 at home?
Enough of you going bad on Janssen.
You tell us.
You bring up.
You tell us, Mr. Statsman. Well, I'm waiting.
Meanwhile, Scotland with a 2-0 victory today over Albania. A lot of pressure on Scotland going into this game after that heavy defeat against Belgium midweek.
Yeah, the defeat against Belgium wasn't wholly surprising. I suppose it was the manner in which it happened, in terms of Belgium also made changes in that game and it could have been worse. The Scottish team weren't under pressure as much as the Scottish manager.
Right.
Now, all sorts of different people were coming out calling Alec McLeish a dinosaur and all the nonsense, but, you know, the game's moved on and utter tripe. Utter tripe. You know, Alec is he's a well-grounded guy in terms of what he wants to do. He's not stupid. He knows the players. He knows what he's working with. It ain't going to be easy. You're not just going to put some young hipster new manager in and all of a sudden this is a Scottish team that is going to start playing great football. We saw them try to play out from the back in the game against Belgium, for those that watched, and they got caught out. Yeah. There's a time and a place for everything. So for Alec himself, it's going to be a tough job. I mean, this managerial post for Scotland since Craig Brown stepped down has been a nightmare. It has been a noose around the neck of almost every manager, and not all bad managers. And Alex, his second time in charge, and it's been a good result for him tonight against a pretty average Albanian side. But by all accounts, it was a decent performance from Scotland, and at least it takes a bit of pressure off them in the short term.
Well, international football continues throughout the week. Tomorrow we'll be back with you, and we'll be focusing on the big game between Spain and Croatia, which certainly catches the eye. And just a reminder, you can always download our daily podcast, which is available on the website. Well, Julien Laurent joins us. Jules, of course, it's pretty good to be France at the moment. That victory against the Netherlands, or the celebrations around.
For the end of December, it makes it even more astonishing, really.
John, you've, of course, covered a lot of games, and there's been a lot of hype over a lot of youngsters over those years. Where does he rate?
Well, no hype more justified than with this player.
Really?
For me.
Good.
Yeah, I think absolutely thrilling to watch. He's the sort that can lift even an old cynic out of his seat. So I just love watching him. Sorry, Craig.
I haven't seen him move.
Well, sorry, he said old cynic, not just cynic.
That's twice now.
Qualifies on both fronts.
Come for you.
No, I love watching him, and I love the freedom and the confidence with which he plays. I mean, there are all sorts of technical reasons to love him, and of course his athleticism and his pace, but just the fact that he brings such joy to the game.
Yeah.
And he plays without fear. Isn't that wonderful?
Yeah, it is. It's difficult to not root for him, isn't it?
Well, I don't know if I was playing against him, but I tell you what, the one thing if you're playing against a player you hate is the pace. But there's lots of quick players out there, but you've got to have a brain, and then you've got to have the talent and the understanding. And for a 19-year-old, it's quite incredible. I mean, won the league twice, won the World Cup, not yet 20, and could absolutely walk into any team, club or country in the world, straight in. I mean, it doesn't get much better than that. The only downside is, and Julian mentioned it, 18 months has kind of been non-stop for him. At some point, he will pick up some injuries and he might need a little bit of rest. But in terms of talent, he's quickly going to supersede maybe Neymar and one or two others. And the next question will be, has he got it in him to deliver the kind of stats and returns that we've seen from the two best players in the world for the best part of a decade, which is Messi and Ronaldo, because they've returned 40 or 50 goals a season. Is he good enough to do that as he gets a little older? Potentially.
The most impressive for me, and you guys are exactly right, are two things. Is he's a very smart footballer. His soccer brain is already at a level that is just up there with the best players in the world. You add in that his composure on the ball in tight spaces for such a young player in the biggest stage is remarkable. And all the other qualities that he has, you add in those last two factors, and you get a player that has a chance of becoming right up there with Messi and Ronaldo.
How's he received in France? Is he...
Oh, they hate him.
No, what I mean is, obviously... Yeah.
Oh, no, I don't want these world-class youngsters here in France.
You think if he was English or if he was American, that would be it, you know, the absolute poster child, not only for soccer, for sport in general. Does that translate in France as well, Jules?
Yeah, it does. It's very much the Mbappe mania right now. It's like everybody wants the shirt. Everybody has either the PSG shirt or the France shirt. And everybody just talks about him. You know, when PSG played at Nîmes before the international break, his name was the only PSG player's name to be clapped and cheered on by the Nîmes Ultras. And he ended up scoring a world-class goal against them, and then he got sent off. So, but yeah, when PSG went to Guingamp, the only PSG player that the Guingamp fans waited for at the end to sign an autograph or take a selfie was Kylian Mbappe. So everywhere he goes with Paris or with the national team, it's all about, everybody is just crazy for him. And I think, you know, the Pogba and Griezmann, people like them, but nowhere near like they start liking and loving Kylian Mbappe.
Jules, what's he like around like PSG or around the French national team? I mean, is he a quiet guy, or is he? Because when I see him playing, and I was saying to the boys, I've never seen a teenager with as much confidence and the ability and to do tricks and all. He just doesn't seem phased at all. Is that what he's like away from the pitch?
Yeah, he's very different. That's the thing. He's so mature. So the two jokes are, he hates when you remind him how young he is. So the players, especially with the national team, keep teasing him that he's actually 15 or 14. The other joke is that he actually behaves like a 40-year-old because he's so mature, he's so composed off the pitch as well, that he's actually quite boring. And then they take the mickey out of him because he feels like he's 40, really, already. He's only 19. And that's the thing, and I think that's why he's so good as well on the pitch, is because he's so composed, because he's so mature, because he's so grown up already. When some of them will take 5, 6, 7 years to be really mature and grown up, he's already playing like a 30-year-old, and I think that's also the big difference with other players from his age.
Meanwhile, Jules, of course, we've seen a lot of those celebrations from yesterday, it being France's first home game since winning the World Cup. What has gone viral and what a lot of people are focusing on is quite interesting, the N'Golo Kante celebrations, where he just... I don't really know how to describe it, in a sense that you can just clearly see he just wants to wave and kind of get out of there.
He obviously was happy to be there and to have won the World Cup, but if he could have been anywhere else in the world last night, he would have done it, because he was so... That's just not him. That's not the kind of thing that he's comfortable doing, that he likes doing. And again, it was very sweet seeing him in that situation. But yeah, I think N'Golo Kante was just very happy when it was all over, basically.
It's interesting for someone who does something in that spotlight and all those eyes on you, and yet you perform as he has done, Kante, and yet when it comes to being rewarded for it, getting the praise, he doesn't want it.
So he wasn't dancing well enough. He was like a drunk uncle at the wedding.
he was sat in the corner. He wanted to go.
Well, he's a you know, even in the way he plays the game, it's very, you know, it's very, I could say under the radar, because everybody notices now what he's been doing. But for a long time, nobody wanted to appreciate that side of the game. You know, the side where he's playing a little bit of a different role now at Chelsea. But previously, he's playing that covering the fullback and covering the centre half and winning the ball back and giving it to the flair players. And kind of that's, I think, how he is as a character. When you see all the other guys, he just wants to be the guy at the back, quietly getting on with his job. And listen, that's to be admired as well.
His personality reflects, as Craig said, almost his position.
It's perfect, isn't it? If you can't have 11 players on the field who want the ball all the time and want to do crazy tricks, you need stability. You need players that take pride in breaking up plays that the other teams are trying to create, and he is exactly that person. Being in a team, you love to have a player like that on your team. In fact, that's probably your favorite player. If you're playing in that group, he's your favorite guy. Because he does all
the dirty work for you.
He does all the dirty work. If I get out of position, he's going to cover for me. He's not, and when he gets the ball, I know he's going to be looking to give it to somebody. And that possibly could be you. And I think Craig said it right. That player for a long time went unnoticed. And now that's changed. He's brought some glamour to doing dirty work and some limelight with now you see everybody in France celebrating him.
What a player.
Oh, is there one of him, or are there two Contes on the field most of the time? I mean, there was that line, wasn't there, when he was playing at Leicester and they were winning the league and surprising the world, that 90% of the world's surface was covered by water, the other 10% by N'Golo Conte. And that was about right. I mean, I love the fact that in a world where it's considered cool to be ostentatious and out there, he's the very antithesis of that. He doesn't like the trappings, he doesn't like the celebration. It's not about him, it's about the team that he's a constituent part of. I think, I mean, now he's getting the praise, he's lauded on a weekly basis, and quite rightly so, even if he's a bit uncomfortable with it.
No.
Did you want to say something?
No, not particularly.
Are you sure?
No.
You could compare him to your humble ways?
No, I was just going to mention Olivier Giroud.
Oh, okay.
And all this,
yeah,
talking about the Griezmanns and Mbappes and Olivier Giroud, much maligned at times, but for country, people always say, why does Deschamps like Olivier Giroud? Because he is a buffer for other players in the style that they play, and his goal scoring for the French national team and his record for the French national team is outstanding for a guy who many fans of clubs that he's played for think he probably shouldn't be in the team. And so it's not all about the Mbappes and the Griezmanns and the superstars. When you've got, and I know you like Giroud, you've mentioned it before. I mean, he does a very good job for the French.
Right. You saw it in the World Cup. He wasn't about to score a goal, but he did what France needed. He needed to be an outlet. He needed to occupy two defenders, allow Mbappe to run into space, allow Griezmann to run off him, and rightfully so, Craig. And he gets goals every once in a while. And that goal he took the other day was awesome. It was magic.
And that goal, of course, means that France are top of their UEFA Nations League group after that victory against the Netherlands.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to be worried about seedings. Something tells me they're not concerned about the seeding issue.
Just a reminder, the next game will... The US in action tomorrow, taking on Mexico. That game live on ESPN at 8:30 Eastern. Calling that match for us in Nashville will be Taylor Twellman and Ian Dark.
Well, of course, the last 11 months have been a bit of a nightmare for US soccer since the failure to qualify for the World Cup. But this has been quite a year. These youngsters are being highly tried. They've already drawn with the world champions France, a respectable effort the other night against Brazil, and now the big grudge match against Mexico. What can we expect, Taylor, do you think?
I think you hit the nail on the head. The fact that this is a transition time, so you've got to try yourself against better competition. Now, what the young players don't realize is this is the game that is the bar by which you're judged for the U.S. men's national team. Whether or not it's a friendly or it's a CONCACAF Gold Cup game or it's a World Cup qualifier, U.S.-Mexico is the rivalry game. Now, I'm not sure we get that necessarily on Tuesday, but the reality is there's going to be a taste of it for some of these young players that ultimately, when World Cup qualifying comes around and Gold Cup, the real action comes. But these are big tests for some young players.
Just at the moment, there's no Josie Altidore, there's no Michael Bradley, there's no Brad Guzan. So there's a new crop coming through. Let's talk about one of those players, Tim Weah, who's in that high-octane environment at Paris Saint-Germain with Cavani and Neymar and Mbappe. But he is getting a bit of game time. How good is he, do you think, at this stage?
Well, obviously, for a player that young to be playing with the first team of PSG, obviously that says where he is talent-wise. But obviously, you hit something that isn't being talked about enough, is that transition of real leadership. You know, Timothy Weah is a young player, and he's coming in with these high expectations from all the U.S. men's national team soccer fans around the world, and yet where's that leadership here? So we may see some growing up, some bumps in the road, but the reality is there's something there. The kid's got real talent, and I think we may see it from the opening whistle Tuesday night.
We've heard from Dave Sarakan, the interim coach, maybe the longest-serving interim coach ever, because it's been going now for nearly a year now. But he says there'll be 5 or 6 changes to the team. We don't quite know what they're going to be at the moment. But he did make the point, because somebody said at the press conference, oh, 5 or 6 changes, doesn't matter what happens then in this game. And he said, you kidding? We want to win. It's Mexico.
Yeah, but that's also why you call in 23 players. I always find that funny when media ask questions, well, why are you making so many changes? Well, I want to see the players. That's why you schedule these friendlies. So 5 or 6 changes doesn't matter to me, because you still need to get some answers on some of those players. I think it's going to be curious to see, does Will Trapp play or does Tyler Adams play in that spot? You know, who plays up front? But again, young players are going to be tested in front of 30,000 plus. I think we get a good idea of some of those questions the United States men's national team have, and some of the young players will get an opportunity to play.
Yep, be fascinating to see USA against Mexico. It's always a big game. 8:30, our coverage starts on ESPN.
Brian, how big a deal is tomorrow?
Listen, anytime the U.S. plays Mexico, there will be a grudge match. And there's an understanding between each player on each side that when you go into this game, there's going to be a lot more eyes on you. They're exactly right in the sense that this is the bar that you're set upon, where your coach will understand, can you handle the pressure? You're not ready for the pressure just yet. And I'm excited to see that. I think changes are definitely going to happen. And one of those changes I would expect is Eric Lehigh is probably going to play on the right side defense. I think DeAndre Yedlin is the definite right back, but having some backup and knowing what Eric Lehigh can do in a situation like this is definitely going to probably happen. I would love to see Timothy Way start up top. And, Bobby Wood does a good job in a lot of the stuff off the ball. I think he still has some growth that can happen on the ball, holding the ball up for the team. Again, this whole process of young players, of bringing young players into camp, not having a ton of leadership, I would probably put a large bet on Will Trapp staying in that same position. I really like him in there. I think he was a bit overzealous getting the penalty. He knew it. He tried to get out of the way, clipped him a little bit, but he has the leadership that this group needs. I thought Jonathan Brooks had a great game. I think that we need to make sure that we get a partnership in the back and build off of that and allow us to then worry about what we need to do going forward. Because let's be honest, we have some options in the youth side and some proven players. So this will be a fun game tomorrow. Make no mistake about it.
From a professional player's point of view, it's kind of sink or swim, isn't it? Like in this sort of environment, like you can really make a name for yourself.
You can, and if it doesn't go particularly well, I would say you're not at the sinking process because you are young. And I'm always a little reticent to criticise younger players, particularly at this level, because I know myself, it can be a tough environment, and you do need a little bit of experience around you. But Ian highlighted the young lad Weah. We've seen some of the young guys come through, played against France in the friendly prior to the World Cup. They did particularly well. We've seen some of them against Brazil. We're going to see some of them again. And I do think it is a period for the United States to start phasing out some of these older players. I do. And whenever the new manager is announced, whoever that may be, and by hell it's taken a long time, get it right and start phasing the older guys out at the right time. Not them all at once, but I think bit by bit, you need to get them out, you need to get the youngsters coming through. Otherwise, you'll never make that transition from the younger guys, getting the experience at whatever level it is, youth, under 20, 21, under 23, to the national team. It's time for big changes here for this team. And it's not time to, I don't believe, to completely go back to the old guard when it gets to a nitty-gritty qualifying game. I think that's the wrong approach.
Is that the right way to go?
I think so. I'm actually quietly impressed with what Dave Sarahan has done in this intermediate time. And I think that whoever the new guy is, when he comes in, can't say, well, I'm not quite sure what I've got here.
Right.
He's going to have a clear picture of everything that's available to him, all the young players, because they've all been given a chance. And he'll know what the older players can do. Some of the older players have stepped aside voluntarily, as we know, over the past 2 or 3 weeks. And I think, actually, whoever comes in is coming into a situation where you can build, you can make something for the future, and you can hit the ground, not running, but trotting at least.
Yeah.
So I think Sarahan, in the circumstances, has done as well as he possibly could do.
Meanwhile, so we've got to move on, Brian. Just this is a big surprise, obviously.
It's a big surprise to me. When Siggy Schmidt took the position, you sort of saw it as a long-term spot. I mean, it's a great job to have. It's a job that you know you're going to have money to get players. If you have an off year, you're going to have a chance to rebuild immediately. And so, to me, I don't know if this is just the fact that they're definitely not getting the results. I think there might be more a personal side, whether it's a health issue, whether it's, he's just not energized enough to do the job. But yes, it was a big surprise to me.
Jeff Carlisle, I've just seen something from Jeff Carlisle, our colleague here, saying, the statement coming out of the Galaxy was a collective decision, which Jeff's end to that was, Not quite sure about that. So it's a little bit muddled, I think, who, and as you say, why somebody with such experience is moving out there. I think it looks maybe like he might have been pushed. I mean, that's kind of the way of reading into it.
Well, it's the timing issue, isn't it? Because LA Galaxy are very much at the wrong end of the table as we enter the business end of the season. You can see they currently sit on 38 points, 3 adrift of Seattle, though Seattle do have 2 games in hand. So just a reminder of all the results from today's UEFA Nations League. As we mentioned, Sweden 2, Turkey 3, Portugal with that 1-0 victory over Italy. Scotland with a win against Albania. It was 2-2 between Serbia and Romania. Montenegro with a 2-0 victory over Lithuania. 1-1 between Andorra and Kazakhstan, and indeed Malta against Azerbaijan. Kosovo, meanwhile, recording that 2-0 victory over Faroe Islands. Now, you've been explaining to us, John, how this works with regards to qualifications.
No, this is the ultimate hospital pass.
No,
this
no,
really is.
Let me borrow a pen,
it's
Dan.
not as complicated as maybe people seem.
No, it is.
No,
It
you
really
can
is.
explain it well with regards to the importance for some of the lower.
Well, for the lower clubs, I think the most important thing to remember is that each tier, so A, B, C and D, are going to have a series of playoffs amongst the group winners. And from those playoffs will emerge the chance to go to Euro 2020, independent of the normal qualifying process. So it means that a team like the Faroe Islands, Azerbaijan, Malta, one of those so-called minnows, will make it to Euro 2020.
So if they fail to qualify in the normal qualifiers, this is like a lifeline that they have to get them through.
It's a second chance.
And then for the big teams in the top league, they play for a trophy, yes? They have a playoff between
they do.
semi-finals and the final.
Yeah, which is next summer.
Have you been enjoying it?
I have, actually. I've enjoyed it more than I thought I was going to. I just think they're so much better than meaningless international friendlies with endless substitutions. There is at least a competitive edge to these. And I just think it's given it a bit more structure as well.
So remind me of some of the countries in D again.
Malta, I think, Andorra, Faroe Islands. You know, the also-rans that we said, I think earlier today, that Andorra got a point today. Yeah. And that, that's big.
I mean, seriously, I get trying to make it competitive. I understand that. What is the point of one of those countries being given a parachute into the European Championships when you, I, and my dog know that they're not good enough to be there? That's what I don't get. That's only going to dilute the European Championship.
Which has already been diluted,
Yeah, but you're just diluting it even more. I'm sorry, and it's just like, we need to find a route for some of these countries to get there. That's not what competition is all about. So it's not. I get the competitiveness of the Nations League.
It's a good point. It is. I mean, you look at the teams that are going to end up not qualifying, and they're going to turn on their TV that summer and see a Faroe Islands. I'd be pretty disappointed.
I don't know if you're bashing the Faroe Islands on this show.
They're not good enough in the normal.
We'll be back tomorrow for more. Until then, goodbye.